Venessa, the Lion Fang Knight and the first ever Grand Master of the Knights of Favonius, hero of Mondstadt, but native to the land of Natlan, and a child of Murata, the Pyro Archon. She would overthrow the aristocracy, she would be a gladiator warrior, dirt poor, and fight her way in the gladiator ring, being undefeated, and would eventually overthrow the aristocracy in Mondstadt, liberating the people there, and making the nation of Anima what it was truly meant to be, free. So let's go over her entire story. How a Natlan native found herself in Mondstadt as a gladiator who would eventually rise to godhood to become the Falcon of the West. Venessa was actually born in Mondstadt, and it is unclear why her tribe or family migrated from Natlan. But either way, I believe Venessa and her generation to be the first born in Mondstadt, so they hadn't been in Mondstadt that long. I believe this because of how they haven't really integrated into Mondstadt culture yet, and they still much live by their traditional ways. The Muratans are a warrior tribe by nature, and what they pass down in knowledge is basically only things to survive, like how to hunt, fight, etc. Pretty much the complete opposite of people from Fontaine. Even teaching history wasn't something they prioritized, but they would often hear stories about Celestia and the gods, and how anyone could rise to godhood. Being told that great heroes were chosen to dwell in Celestia, becoming immortal and protecting the world. Venessa was greatly inspired by this from a young age. Venessa would reach adulthood before one day her tribe was attacked by Ursa the Drake, a dragon that hounded them for 4 days, starving them and forcing them to seek refuge in the city of Mondstadt. Although they were safe from the dragon there, the aristocrats and rich nobles there would enslave them almost immediately, and they would not have the technology to resist. And having women and children that could not fight, the strongest of her tribe were forced to yield. The worst of these nobles being the Lawrence clan, the same family that Yule is from, and why people still resent her family's name. The rich nobles were amused by the Muratan tribe, and Venessa, being the strongest among them, was pitted in the gladiator ring, where she quickly rose to fame and became known as the Lion Fang Knight, having a famous undefeated streak, and even defeating the previous undefeated champion. But Venessa only did this for her sister and the possibility of winning their freedom, so it was a means to an end. The slaves were allowed to wander Mondstadt from time to time, at certain points of the day, and during Windbloom Festival, Venessa went out to buy some herbs for her sister who was sick when she saw a young boy bump into Barca Lawrence, the heir and prince of the Lawrence clan. This young boy would actually be Venti in disguise, who would then quickly run and hide behind Venessa. Venti hiding behind Venessa and Barca Lawrence, knowing her reputation, had little to no chance in a one-on-one fight. So he had his father purchase Venessa and her entire clan, and then immediately had her imprisoned. Venti, feeling bad that he caused her imprisonment, paid her a visit that night before her final battle, and he made friends with her, having a conversation with her and teasing of her origin of Natlan and calling her a child of Murata. She would have no idea of this, being that her family and her tribe don't really pass down history, and she had also no idea that he was the animal archon in disguise. But nevertheless, they became quick friends, and Venti loved her tenacity and her iron will, but mostly her fortitude and good spirit. For anybody willing to go to prison to stick up for a stranger was a good person indeed, and being that he was the animal archon, he could easily break them out of prison, and he offered to do so. But she refused, claiming, "We must fight and claim our own freedom. We cannot beg for it. We must not kneel for it. Freedom, given freely, is only a ruse to another shackle." And Venti, the animal archon, could not be more pleased with this response, so instead they both concocted a plan. But unfortunately, the next morning she was horrified to learn that she was not fighting alone. Her entire clan, including the children and elderly who could not fight, were also pitted against Ursa the Drake itself, the same dragon that drove him into Mondstadt in the first place. Lord Lawrence declared that if she could defeat this monster and dragon, she would win her people's freedom. He also had his archers slay any of her fellow clan members who attempted to escape the arena, so it was do or die for her entire clan, even firing a few arrows to make an example, killing some members in her tribe. But Venessa, having a will of iron, refused to give up, striking down hordes of hilly trolls left and right, under Ursa the Drake's command, and then eventually fighting Ursa itself, about to be overwhelmed when Barbados appeared in his Archon form, bolstering her powers and giving her abilities, and helping her drive Ursa the Drake away. Ursa the Drake would not die this day, as it would escape with its life, only to be slain later on by the Doctor Iltadore, the second Fatui Harbinger. Barbados then orders Lord Lawrence to hand over control of the city and free the Muratans as agreed upon. But the conflict would not end there, as this would trigger a much larger uprising in Mondstadt, rich nobles everywhere and a way of life falling apart before their eyes. But some of the knights were inspired by Venessa and turned against their benefactors. And many people in Mondstadt who lived under the heel of the rich, corrupt nobles in Mondstadt, who lived under their heel, rebelled against the aristocracy. And even one rich clan, the Gunhilder clan, the same clan Jean and Barbara are from, who always refused to have slaves, followed her. This little inner civil war would go on for a little while, until it was revealed that some of the nobles themselves and some of the soldiers were intended to be slaves and sold off to Liyue, to some merchants. And this would be the straw that the remaining soldiers serving the aristocracy would finally turn on them and be the end of the civil war, joining Venessa's cause. It wouldn't be till many generations later that we learned that this document was fake. Perhaps it was used to persuade the remaining people that sided with the nobles, but either way it worked. And it is heavily speculated that Barbados himself forged this document, which I think is honestly hilarious. It's something exactly what he would do. Venessa, after leading a successful rebellion, defeating a dragon, and becoming friends with the Animal Archon, finally secured freedom in Mondstadt. And she would begin the city's reconstruction, and she would establish the Knights of Avonius to fight against any who would become tyrants in Teyvat or think they're above the rest. She would then become its first ever Grand Master and be the first Dandelion Knight. And this title would be passed down generation to generation to its current holder, Jean Gunhilder of the Knights of Avonius, and its current acting Grand Master. A great role model and legacy to live up to. Venessa was a well-respected and well-perceived Grand Master. She had integrity, she was proven in battle, but most of all she was caring and compassionate. She made sure that the entirety of Mondstadt lived up to its name of freedom, and had order, and was just. And her tribe lived out peaceful lives. But Venessa eventually became exhausted after many years of her Knights of Avonius duties as the Grand Master, and would often be found meditating at the Eagle's Gate domain after her retirement. It is not really said what happened after this, but according to many sources, it is said that Venessa was finally recognized by the gods, the same story she heard about as a kid, and at the Tree of Windrise. Venessa was finally recognized by the gods for her deeds, just like all those stories she heard about as a kid, and at the exact spot that that great oak tree now sits at Windrise, she ascended into godhood and became the Falcon of the West. This tree also holds a very important place in Mondstadt for a lot of people, including the Animal Archon that goes there to think, meditate, and also heal himself, like we seen him do in Dvalin's story quest where he was tainted with the poison, and after Signora takes his gnosis. It is a very special place to him because it is his first and closest friend, because it is the final resting place of the first Grand Master in the Knights of Avonius, and a very dear friend to him, Venessa, the hero of Mondstadt, the Falcon of the West, the first Dandelion Knight, and a native to Natlan, the Pyro Nation. And that is going to conclude the story of Venessa. I'm very interested to see the different tribes in Natlan, and if we get a reference to her or her family in some way. It would be pretty cool to get more information on her, but seeing that as she is a deceased character, or at least in her human form, it's interesting to see if we'd ever see her in her falcon form. One thing that remains a mystery though is, will we ever see Venessa again? If she actually did ascend to godhood, does that mean that she's immortal in a sense, or could still take human shape? To be honest, I don't see why not. The details are very vague, but it would be pretty cool if we got to see her at some point in time eventually. Having a cutscene with her, having her reintroduced in her falcon form but still can take her human shape, that would be awesome. And honestly, I'm all for more Mondstadt characters because she's a very popular character. I think her banner would do very well. But also, we haven't had a new Mondstadt character that's a 5-star since Eula. I do think that they're going to expand Mondstadt in between Natlan and Chesnaya chapters. We still have the Dorman Port expansion in Mondstadt, so I do believe either leading up to Natlan or between Natlan and Chesnaya, maybe to touch on the culture of Natlan and the different tribes. Venessa would be an awesome character to reintroduce and potentially even make playable. I don't see why she couldn't take her human form again. I'm sure they could write a story in that justifies this. Another place I hope they expand on her story and go into more detail on her rebellion in Mondstadt is the anime, because the anime is going to focus on a lot of the past events, seen as that they're not going to want to spoil what happens in the future, and she's definitely one of the most influential characters in Mondstadt history. She reshaped the entire landscape of Mondstadt from head to toe. She's the most iconic hero in Mondstadt, so for them to focus at least an episode on the anime would be really cool. But I do hope we get some more things revolving around Venessa or even Varka, the current Grandmaster that's on his expedition. I know Mondstadt's an old region, but we do get new Inazuma 5-stars, we get Liyue 5-stars almost every year. And I feel like Mondstadt's that one region that's left out the most, and it has some of the most interesting and powerful characters lore-wise, so it would be cool to see her and Varka talked about more. But thank you so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed the video. We got the Dore next, and then we got a new batch of characters coming up, so stay tuned for that. And as always, we will see you all in the next one. Later.